I attribute well, I'm a master gardener and I'm addicted to plants, like probably most of you. So I attribute my love to nature to my parents, my grandparents, who all emigrated here from a little tiny Baltic country named Latvia. They each took like their portion of agriculture. They brought it here and they each had different ways of planting or enjoying nature. And I took all of that in when I was younger. And I eventually ended up here in New Jersey. While my kids were little, I first found winter sowing because I was looking for stuff to do in the middle of January, February, March, and always getting ready for the garden, but always a little too early to be planting, right? So the website doesn't exist anymore, but there used to be a website called wintersown.org. And in those days, back in the early 2000s, Trudy would send you, if you sent her an envelope with a stamp on it and self-addressed and all that, she would send you seeds to start this whole winter sowing thing. And then you get a little sheet with directions and it was great. Take a container, put some soil in there, put some seeds on it, watch it grow kind of thing. So I will show you my presentation of how it looks for me. Just the arrows, brother one?
Yep, that'll work.
Okay. All right. That's it, right? We're going to be there at some point. Everybody's going to be wondering, what am I going to do now, right? And itching, looking through your seed catalogs and your bulb catalogs, right? So, Trudy, I'm going to get her name wrong because I can't see my notes here. Trudy Dusdorf, I think I'll look her name up when I get over to giving you the actual presentation. She was the one that went to the USDA and said, we need to have another propagation method officially in a definition in the US. So she's the one that fought for this. So by definition, winter sowing is a propagation method used throughout the winter where temperate climate seeds are sown into protective vented containers and placed outside to foster a naturally timed high percentage germination of climate tolerant seeds. Whew, a lot of words. Basically, you're taking the seeds and you're protecting them, you're giving them a private little greenhouse, and they will come out when they're ready. You don't have to scratch the seeds, you don't have to put them in the refrigerator because they're doing all that by themselves outside.
I messed up the settings. It doesn't seem like it's
Oh, okay. All right, so what does that mean? We basically take recyclable containers and you make the small greenhouse. Then you add your soil, you put your seeds on there, you sow your seeds, and you put it outside in the elements. It's really as easy as that. And then in that contained environment, what it does is it increases the likelihood of germination of your seeds. And cold stratification all happens naturally because the seeds will go through freeze thaw, as we see when the temperature starts to change, and we don't know, but we get that snow in April, and then they get, they get buried, and then all that thaws, and so they keep going through that. Trudy came up with this because she didn't have any room in her tiny little house. That's basically how it all happened. So you don't need a heat source, you don't need windowsills, and you don't honestly have to worry about it once you put them out. All you have to worry about is getting more containers and putting more of them outside because it gets a little bit addictive, right? And where am I going to put all the plants?
not going.
Nope. Not going. We're just
Screen too, because she shared.
okay. Okay, all right. Okay. All right, so what do you need? Pretty simple. A recycled container, soil, any good potting soil will do, seeds, tape, a drill or an awl or something to make holes. Some people also put the awl on a gas burner, heat it up and do make holes that way, or use a soldering iron. I've done that as well. It's really quick, goes through the plastic. You just need to make sure everything's ventilated so that you're not overcome by plastic fumes. Plant markers, very important. Scissors and a permanent marker. Probably things you all have. So first thing you need to do after you pick your container is just need to clean the containers. Sometimes it is also easier to do once you cut them in half, so you can do it then too. Then add your drain holes, right? So very important is you need to make holes in the top and the bottom of the container. So a couple of times I have a couple seasons, you get so carried away because there's so many of them, made holes in the top, forgot to make holes in the bottom. And then you stare and you're like, why is this one not germinating, right? And these, I'll tell you now, oops, it does go forward. Oh, backwards. Okay. All right. So for salad containers, we go through a lot of spinach and lettuce. So I double them, I put them on top of each other. So the reason for picking containers also is you need to make sure if you've ever done seedlings inside, they get pretty big, don't they? By the time that you're ready to plant them outside. So the first year I did them in salad containers with just the regular top on them. And there's just not enough space because those little seeds will germinate and they'll need more space to grow. So I double them up like this, and then they have plenty of space to grow by the time May comes around and it's safe to plant them all. Holes in the bottom. I add extra holes in top. If you go on any of the forums, Facebook has a lot of them now. Everybody has different opinions, but I always put enough holes in there because I found over the years that I've been winter sowing, if you don't have enough holes in it, you'll find water will only go in the top when it rains, or maybe it doesn't always rain straight up and down, right? So you won't get that much moisture in it. So I add some more. In the milk jugs particularly, I add some right here where the handle is, where the water is going to come down along the container. And always make sure there's enough of them. So you want everything to drain. You don't want it to be sitting because that plagues. All right, cutting the containers in half with scissors. I leave a hinge again. It's another point and it's an opinion. I found that it works easy because then at least when I'm planting, I can keep them all together. Now, many times I'll have them removed and I'll have to figure out where the tops go when I use them more than one season. But for me, I found that if I make two holes on either side of, let's say for the milk jugs, on either side of where the handle is, and then I use my scissors because it's easier than punching your scissors through it, use that hole that you've now made and cut all the way around it to meet the other hole, right? So it's easy, safer. And then that way it's easier to close. And when you have to go to tape, it's easier to put the two sides together. Fill it up, usually at least 3 inches. I wouldn't go under 3 inches. Some people say 4. Pre-moistened, you can pre-moisten it before you add it to it. You can moisten them afterwards. You can also do it after the seeds are there. The reason for pre-moistening is if you've ever used potting soil, a lot of times it tends to be like waterproof, hydrophobic, right? So it takes a while for it to soak up the water. So typically I take it in the big tote and I wet it a little bit while you're getting everything ready. Or as you have your bins done, start filling them all, wetting them, draining them, and then putting the seeds on top. Label. Oh. Now think about it, if you leave it, put it out in January, and you're gonna plant it in April, May, by the time they start sprouting, unless it's something that you can easily identify, you could potentially end up having like a bunch of mystery jugs, right? And then you're like, oh, perennial or vegetable? Usually you can tell, but you never know. So I found over the years, and a lot of people use like mini blinds or other different plant markers that are plastic or what have you. But if you label it and put it inside the jug, with permanent marker. I use a tongue depressor, popsicle stick, whatever. Then even when this fades, this will still stay. So, and usually put it somewhere so that when you peer inside, even if you can't see the A on the outside, you can still peer inside and be like, oh, look, it's still growing. And then you put your seeds. Again, there's a lot of this is up for discussion. I don't think you can really go wrong because we're mimicking nature. So a lot of times you'll see if you have things come up in your garden because the seeds were left there because they basically went through the same thing, but maybe not as high of a germination rate because they weren't covered. But many seeds, you know, are blown by the wind, they scatter. So these are Cleome seeds, and apparently here's Cleome and my snap peas. I have done snap peas this way for years. It is awesome because by the time you can buy them in the stores, yours are already like 2 times, 3 times as big, and they grow really well. And then you have to attach the top to the bottom and tape it. Again, there are discussions. Do you tape or do you tie? I think the opinion is depending on where you live. Here where we are, you really are conserving that warmth in the middle of the day. So if you, what I typically do, at least tape opposite of the hinge, so match everything up and tape that side. And if you don't have enough tape or don't want to use tape all the way around, at least you have most of it sealed so that when it warms up, when the sun comes out, you have kind of that greenhouse effect. And then this is the hardest part. You put them outside and you forget about them until you make your next batch and you put them next to this batch. And there's a lot of different things, as you can see. I tried a lot of stuff. So I labeled inside, outside, everywhere. Using the sticks inside definitely helped. This is only 1 level, so I must have had something really low growing there. But that's kind of what it looks like. And then you wait and you wait and you wait and you watch. And then you watch as the ground starts warming up. If there's been a lot of wind, if it's been super, super dry, you can always, you know, put some water on top. I put mine in my raised beds so that they get the same watering as, you know, anything outside would get. I do water them sometimes if we end up having like a really long dry spell and nothing's come from the sky. So you want to look at your condensation. You want a little bit of condensation. If you're not getting any, you probably have too many holes. And sometimes if you get too much condensation, there's not enough holes. So you'll look down and you'll see it's turning kind of greenish, the top of the soil. So then you know that it's not vented enough. Can't really go wrong. And then, dun, 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 suddenly, like magic, they all start appearing. And soon enough, you don't know what to do with them. This is my arugula that went crazy. It was already went to seed before I ever got to plant it. It's just so much fun. And then these are basically, they come out like in big seed mats, depending on how you plant. I've done this with kids too. So typically you end up having like a whole, you know, the whole packet of seeds in one of these. and then you're like, okay, then you've got to thin. And I hate thinning because I don't like getting rid of a plant, right? Who likes doing that? I've found that your root vegetables don't typically like to be replanted. So I don't do carrots, or I have tried beets. They just didn't like to be replanted. I usually direct sow those. You can try those, but I have tried all kinds of seeds, even seeds that I found that were super old. So that's what my garden looks like when it's still nice and non-weedy and the tomatoes haven't taken over. But I didn't do the zucchinis winter sown, but I I do kale every year. Kale is great. And I think I have a picture. So these are the first ones that I did. We lined the bottom with newspaper, we did them. These are ones from, I think a couple of years ago. You can see a lot of seeds in there. I think those are flowers though. And then here, you know, you get a seed mat like this, and then you really just take out the chunks and spread them out and plant them. And so this is a picture from this morning. My kale is still growing strong, and that was winter sown this past year. So if we don't eat it, I have hens, so someone always takes care of it, but it's still holding up. It looked a lot like this when I took them and planted them. So I'll go back here. Anybody have any questions? These are the different things. If you do a search on winter sowing, cooperative extension winter sowing, a lot of YouTube videos will come up of master gardeners across the country that will give you different, it's all basically the same. Everybody has a little bit of a twist. There is one gardener out on YouTube that is kind of very much against using recycled containers because of the way they look. So he's like, Kale, if you don't like the way the jugs look. So, and then the Winter Sown Educational Forum on Facebook is Winter Sowers, and she does actually say Winter Sown Educational Forum, and there's a lot of information that Trudy, the one that fought for the USDA definition, has on there. She's got a bunch of different lists and things printed on there. I believe she no longer has her own website and doesn't sell seeds because I think she may have been taken advantage of a little bit. So she decided to go this way instead, but she answers questions on there all the time. But there's other places where you can look. monarchbutterflygarden.net also has a whole section if you do search for winter sowing in there. Does anybody have any questions? It's really not that difficult. Yes.
My question is, what did you find were like the 3 or 4 best things that work this way?
Kale works awesome. I guess I did also do a lot of flowers. So cone flowers always come up for me. I did have some old poppy seeds and I grew blue poppies. They were like expired. And I was like, well, get them out of my, what am I gonna, if I'm not gonna throw them away, I have an extra container. And they came out last year and they were beautiful. And now I collected the seeds to do it again. A lot of the perennials will come out really easily, but like I said, I also do snap peas every year. Those I always start early. And I make sure I space them out because those will have nice root balls similar to what you would get at a nursery. And then I've planted them side by side and they do really well. They're already hardened off. So once the seedlings get big and the weather starts to warm up a little bit, then you can open up your containers. However, we always tend to have, and I don't know, the Farmer's Almanac said it could be a rough winter, right? So if you do open them up, just make sure you close them up at night. Sometimes you do get a hard frost. People go out and cover them up with blankets, just to protect the seedlings. So it does happen sometimes. I have done tomatoes and peppers as well. So they all work. Herbs.
Yes. What is the time frame for winter sows? February, March?
I have started as early as July. Some people also do December. And basically the seeds will come out when they're ready. So unlike us forcing seeds early inside to be ready to go outside in May, you can put these jugs outside. There are people, I checked the forums last night, people do them in December at the summer solstice. So, the winter solstice, which will be next week. People start sowing all the way through. I think I did my last ones in March. I did some more annual flowers later because then you don't have to worry about as much. You don't have to worry about the hard frost getting to any of those plants because it'll take them a while to warm up and get ready to sprout. Yeah.
Hand out the sheet that you have.
Yep.
There's a list of seeds on there that I don't.
Yep. I do. I have a list of seeds on the sheet. But like I said, I've tried